Hello, everybody. Welcome to this broadcast with guest speaker Dr. Saeb Shaat. We refer to you, Saeb, as Son of Gaza. And Saeb is located in Belfast. And this is a joint venture with Social Rights Ireland and with the Peadar O'Donnell Socialist Republican Forum. We're based in Ireland and we are both anti-imperialist organisations. So I'd like to welcome also our panelist and maybe ask everyone to mute if that's okay. Sorry, I should have done that at the start. We have Tommy McKerney, Patricia Campbell and Barry Murray, who have agreed to come on this week to maybe offer an analysis, Saeb, of the topic that you're going to explain, which is an update on what happened on Tuesday with Qatar being bombed by the Israelis. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Saeb.
It's a pleasure being here with you, and hello to everyone. We got to remember and keep in mind that the Zionist entity, which is quote unquote, they call it Israel, not just an extension of the imperialist powers, which is back Americanos in the region, which is the West Asia and the Arab world. It's a proxy hegemon right now, acting as I called it maybe before in the podcast. It's the real American attack dog with the face of the Zionist entity and Netanyahu. While it is the United States of America, it's back Americanos with the.
We can do something out of this. It's just been such.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for that interruption. Go ahead.
Okay, so it is the American imperialist kind of proxy and become regional hegemon in there to impose the will of the United States of America and the imperialist powers in there to keep the region defragmented and to keep the region in turmoil and to keep the region in kind of sectarian war as we seen in Iraq or in Syria, and to keep these many warlords who's been financed in Libya or in Sudan or in Somalia, destroying the region. While that is happening, the United States of America and the Western powers can guarantee they will loot and they will control they loot the region from its own resources, and they will control the heart of the world, which is it's in the heart between the three continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And from there, this geopolitical position, the United States of America seek to use in its anti kind of wars waged against the BRICS or the rest of the global South. That's where the German Chancellor Merz, when he said Israel, the Zionist entity, it does the dirty work in behalf of them. So this is where we should understand this unprecedented strike, which is on Qatar, which is a regional ally of the United States of America. Qatar is being doing the mediating for and in behalf of the United States of America. Let's not forget, Qatar was the country who opened and the kind of embassy for the Taliban while they were fighting the United States of America in there, and that was with the kind of agreement between the Qatari and the United States of America to allow the Taliban leadership to be or to have a kind of semi embassy in there, so they can start the negotiation with the Taliban. And that's what the Qatari played the role to bring the Americans and the Taliban's together. And that's where the United States of America, after being defeated in Afghanistan, left. The same thing, Barack Obama in 2011, asked the Qataris to host the leadership of Hamas in Doha, so they can start negotiation with them at the time. And they from 2011, the American noticed the influence the movement like Hamas having in even the direction of the Arab Spring at the time. So this is where the Hamas came in there with guarantees from the Qataris and the United States of America. And their leadership start the ones outside Palestine residing in Qatar, and to see Qatar, who's been mediating from then with the Hamas to broker cease a fire between the Zionist entity and the Palestinian resistance from the 2011 onwards. Before that, it was Egypt. Now it was Egypt, Qatar, and the United States of America, and you see all of that. It comes in on the back of understanding the Zionist entity, as we said, is built as a front line for the empire and to further its global hegemony. And in there, the United States of America can see right now the resistant movement in Palestine is not budging. And the resistant movement in Palestine and Gaza is still on its feet and is fighting. And whatever operation they come with, and they throw so many investment in the Zionist entity, the Palestinian is still on the ground and fighting, and the Israeli the Zionist entity's army is all what is doing, as we see in Gaza today and from the previous operations, killing and destroying the infrastructure in Gaza, killing and destroying every medical or media or any area which the Palestinian can civilians can find a place into at least to seek shelter. And they are not. If you look at the destruction in the towers in south of Gaza City today and yesterday, and that is all targeting families. Yesterday in Sabra area, they issued warning for a few houses, and suddenly they didn't attack the houses. They issued warning to them. They attacked the neighboring block, and they killed so many people in that. So this is the kind of evil entity we are facing, and in that they thought by himself, Donald Trump, insisted that he is brokered now a plan with, and this peace plan Israel is accepted, and he threatened the leadership of Hamas. This is your final kind of ultimatum, and if you don't accept that, we'll kill you. And suddenly the leadership of Hamas meets in Qatar, the negotiating team, and of course, while they are in Qatar, there is Al Hadid air base in there, which is the biggest the Americans have in outside the United States of America, which is built by Qatari money and investment of Qatar. The huge billions, thousands of billions of money in there to appease the Americans, and the Americans don't pay for it. The Qataris maintain it, and the Qataris looking after. They say in return they will be looked after, and their security will be taken, will be looked after by the United States of America. And what happened? It's the central command in there, which knows every kind of a plane or movement or missiles or anything crossing the Middle East. This is the central command, which was creating safe corridors from the Zionist entity in top of Lebanon or Jordan or Syria or Iraq to cross to Iran and attack Iran without being discovered by the air defenses, the Iraqi air defenses. And this this radar system in there coordinate with the one in Angelic Air Base in Turkey, which can see everything in the region. And while you have a state like Qatar, who invested in the security with the United States of America, and being attacked by the Zionist entity, and the news saying the Zionist entity 16 airplanes were refueled by a British fuel tanker in the skies before Doha, and reconnaissance planes, British and Americans, were in the skies and over Qatar while they're attacking the Hamas leadership. Then of course, the American intelligence and the British in there would know the movement of the leadership of Hamas or the negotiation team in Qatar. But this was given a promise by the President Obama when he asked the Qataris to host them in there, that nobody will touch any negotiating team or any of these people, which the Americans asked the Qataris specifically to allow them. So we heard what the Trump said. He insisted that they didn't know about the strike, and he warned Qatar of the attack, but it was too late, as he said, 10 minutes later after the attack. And it's all typical double speak by the Americans. And
just in that point, Saeb, I might just cross over because that's a very important point. It was Trump's reaction. And of course, mainstream media has presented it as like that, you know, he's annoyed about, slightly annoyed or irked, I can't remember the exact word about it. But maybe Tommy, on that point, can I bring Tommy in here, Saeb, just for
of course.
your breath? On that point, Tommy, a question maybe that I put to you is, do you think that what has happened, because I think as far as we can see today, the Qatari government and other Arab state leaders are meeting actually in Qatar, and they said that they're going to respond, and it won't just be a statement of strong condemnation, that they need to respond to Israel. But do you think, Tommy, that this incident could possibly change relations or alter relations or have any effect at all between the US and maybe not Israel, but even Netanyahu? He seems to be annoyed with Netanyahu more than Israel.
I'd be very reluctant to speculate that it's going to make a fundamental change. I think, as Dr. Shaat has pointed out, that the Qatari government has a vested interest in maintaining its security front via the United States. Therefore, that difficult as it is to imagine, but the point about it is that if it should happen, if there was any morality in the Qatari government, that would demand that the United States remove every last vestige of its presence from Qatar. But I think the problem is that we're talking here about oligarchies in charge of these countries, that they're afraid of their own people as much as they are of anything else. That if the United States was to remove its presence, that the decent people of Qatar who are shocked and appalled at what's happening in Gaza would refuse to tolerate the regime. So I think that's the same with the Saudis and a few other Arab states. The people are appalled at what's happening and would not tolerate it, but they're being held in place by iron fist. And in Qatar, the regime has been propped up by the United States, and I think that's what will eventually possibly determine what happens.
Thanks, Tommy. And maybe quickly over to you, Barry, and we'll come back to you, Saeb, to respond. So Barry, what would your take be on what has happened this week and the impact that it will have, you know, like the immediate impact? You might need to unmute, Barry, as well, the immediate impact, and maybe even will there have any long, you know, for other countries and sovereign countries even in the region, like let's look at Iran, for example, even.
Well, I think, you know, that it would be too optimistic to think that the Arab states, the governments in the Arab states are going to, put together a massive army or a massive load of missiles and attack Israel in a form of revenge. I don't believe that that's going to happen. But I think the best thing that could possibly come out of it, possibly not in the short term, more in the long term, would be that it's definitely further damage, if it was needed, to the so-called world order and democracy for what it's worth. I think that the people, the citizens that Tommy mentioned there of all of the Arab states, particularly probably Kuwait, are going to be at least privately thinking to themselves, like, where are we here? What's happening, and what's our leaders doing? And they couldn't possibly be happy with this situation, and they certainly couldn't be happy with their governments. The thing of it is that, if you take the like of Saudi Arabia, that is probably the biggest purchaser of American weaponry and probably have the latest American equipment, would easily be able to take on Israel. They won't do it. They're far too much tied into the American economy and oil and whatever else. The sad thing is that the Arab states are bought and sold long ago. And, we as activists sort of point out that, world imperialism, which has now reached the stage of what has been classified as hyper-imperialism, which means that war and all the aspects of war is the leading cutting edge of them maintaining their grip on society. And that's not going to change anytime soon. The only hope might be something like Iran. If Iran can put enough pressure, as they appear to be able to do, on Israel, it may or may not curtail their activities. But it's far from over, and I think this attack on Doha is much more damaging than probably is even apparent at the present time. We have Marco Rubio landing in Tel Aviv now would seem under pressure to talk to the Israelis now. They're not going to be sorting out a plan to give the Palestinians a new Palestinian state and all Israel withdraw. But at least it has pressurized the like of him to act, and it's, at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, the Hamas resistance has created a world crisis for imperialism, and that's the bottom line. Now, you can blame whoever you want, and you can point fingers all around the place, but at the end of the day, the Arab resistance, the Hamas resistance on the ground in Gaza and indeed the West Bank has, without a doubt, has created a world crisis for what is now hyper-imperialism, actually.
And it's having a ripple effect back here on us as well.
Having a ripple effect all over the world, actually.
All over the world, yeah. Thank you, Barry. And Saeb, maybe back to you, because if we're looking at it, even just it's just one more example of exposing how the Zionist entity isn't at all sincere about engaging in ceasefire talks. We have to remember who were they targeting in Qatar as well, and what were Hamas doing there at that moment in time. So they were there as a delegation, and they didn't actually, well, according to some sources, take out electronica intifada, said that the leaders, the negotiating leaders, weren't actually targeted, and it was sort of lower level Hamas activists. So that's exposed, as you said, Tommy or Barry, not like we need to say it again, but there are still people who are only coming to this narrative, coming into the story, starting to pay attention to what's going on. So it further exposes how, and when you talk about ceasefire and all of that, some people say, I just want it to end. That is, of course, that's a natural human reaction. I don't want to see this anymore. But I mean, and they need to call a ceasefire, and what about the hostages? But sure, Israel isn't even sincere whenever they would target those who were supposed to be negotiating or at least talking about a potential situation for a ceasefire. What do you have on that, Saeb? Or
You see, if you look at the historically what the Zionists intended to do, assassinating the leadership of Hezbollah in Lebanon, it came at the same thing where they were talking about ceasefire and discussions, and then they wiped out Hassan Nasrallah and the leadership with nearly 84 bunker busters rockets against a few men. And the same thing when the Iranian government during the first wave of attack after, of course, Iran held 6 rounds of talks with the United States of America over its nuclear supposed to be a program, the civilian one, which is the Americans left in 2018 with a tweet after 5 years of 6 world powers engineering that project. And once the Iranian government, led by the President Bazinshah himself, sat to discuss what's happening in the war, they attacked them, the Zionist entity, killed lots of, the president escaped. And the same thing happens again and again. Once you see even what Trump expressed after the attack on Tarak in Qatar, when he expressed regret and tried to shift the blame from the US, and at the same time was doubling down that the target was worthy. Remember that. So the problem for them is they didn't manage to wipe out the negotiation team from Hamas. This is what they are regretting, and is killing the negotiators. What is Trump was after. So if we remember what this war criminal Henry Kissinger said, he comes to mind now. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but it's to be America's friend is fatal. And that's you can understand the relationship here between the Qatari and the Americans and the Zionist entity. The Qatar flirting with the kind of normalizing relationship with the Zionist entity, wants and doesn't want to play pro the resistance, want to play hosting the Zionist entity and appeasing the United States of America and doing whatever the United States of America is did. The problem is as well, when they see during the when the Iranian issued a warning to the American, and they said, and to the Qataris, the last day of the war between Iran and the Zionist entity of the United States, we're going to destroy the radar system. And that's what they said to the Iranian, to the Americans. We're going to hit Al Aidid base in Qatar. And they asked, and they warned the Qataris as well. And suddenly we saw millions of video clips of the Qataris in Al Jazeera and the Americans with their THAAD missiles and patriotic missiles covering the skies. And still the Iranians succeeded after the warning and destroyed the most sophisticated radar system, which is like seeing all the West Asia, discover anything moves in there. That radar system, as I said, connected with the Angelic Air Base, with it, which have nukes in it in there in Turkey, can see anything and can guarantee safe corridors to the Israelis' airplanes while it's attacking Iran. And when the Israelis attacked the Doha, we didn't see even one shot fired at the skies in there. What happens? This is what tells the Arabic regimes that when they play with their own sovereignty and they depend on arming themselves by the United States of America, the United States of America won't activate its weapons when it's going to go fire against its own allies like the Zionist entity or the British. So then the Qatari found themselves like defenseless. Even if they wanted themselves to activate any missiles, they couldn't without the maybe the passwords from the United States of America or that put them in kind of you know, like difficult situation. As I said, the planes crossed from Zionist entity over Jordan, over Saudi Arabia as well, and tracked by CENTCOM radars and satellite system as well, and still nobody, even in Turkey, because it's all controlled by the Americans, told the Qataris anything. And let's remember, there is a few Turkish military advisors in Qatar. Nobody mentioned anything to the Qataris, and the Qataris being, you know, like their sovereignty was compromised, and the Pax Americana did the job and pretended they didn't know about it, but they know these are submissive states, and they the ones who seeks the protections of the Americans. So a country who seeks American security guarantees and want to ensure economic stability in the process, they become an American satellite entity who loses their own sovereignty in the process. And to the Anglo-Saxon kind of centrism, if I want to say, or selfishness in the region. And it's they want the Americans to project power right now, and the empire want to impose its geo-economical and geopolitical superiority in the region, and that to show it's capable, it's in wider challenging of the moving world order right now against the Chinese, against the Russians, against the Iranians, against all the BRICS as well, or the Shanghai. And that is especially after what we saw, the Chinese, when they done the military parade on the 80th anniversary of defeating the fascist Japanese and the imperialists in there. It's as well a signal that the Americans are ready at any time to face any kind of aggression, and this is as well losing control as well. And this, as in the other side, this is going to make the Arabs in the region and they want to create a new kind of security, a new kind of framework for themselves. And how they're going to build a new framework of security when they discover right now their enemy is not just the Zionist entity, even if some of them don't think of the Zionist entity as an enemy. But today their own people telling them the enemy is the Zionist entity and the United States of America. So the population in the region wanted a new security framework, and that security framework was proposed by Iran maybe 10 years ago, when they said the Americans won't secure the region. The Americans will put the regions at smaller wars or bigger conflicts in the future to secure its interests, and they want to enslave us. Let us find a framework to protect our interests, mutual interests, and to stop any kind of conflict between ourselves. And that it's if you want me, I can go on in this one. It needs a lot of work, but it can be done.
No, I think that's just for a second, Saeb. Maybe I'll get you to pause there, and again I'm going to come back to Tommy, Barry, and then maybe Patricia for a quick summary. But Tommy, like Saeb was talking about, and we're here, we're, you know, in Ireland, based in Ireland, with a very strong revolutionary tradition, and I think it's really important when we're looking at this, even when Saeb, you're talking about the sovereign state of Qatar, but actually, you know, how do you reconcile that with the fact that if they were truly sovereign, they would have control over their own security, which they don't. So I'm going to swoop right over back to Ireland, Tommy, and say the same thing. Look at how, I know it's not the same, but to draw parallels, look at Ireland right now as well, and you still have people like currently we are fighting to save neutrality, and then that brings up sort of lots of contradictions. People say, well, we're not neutral in the first place, because if we were, we wouldn't have, you know, Shannon Warport. And so I'm just going to ask you, Tommy, about like to explain, maybe even for those listening in from other parts of the world, you know, this idea of sovereignty, how in some ways it's a bit of a fallacy, or independence anyway in Ireland is a fallacy. And then maybe to Barry, to you, like what do we need to do? So if you could explain that, Tommy, just for listeners, and then Barry, that what do we need to do to educate more and to expose that we are anything but independent. I'm not saying we're like Qatar, you know, we don't have the same big US CENTCOM base that you were talking about, Saeb, but in what way can you draw parallels with Ireland, Tommy?
Well, to an extent, it's a matter of extent to what perspective we have on it. I remember one time listening to an old man telling me about the South America, where the Southern American oligarchy depends for its existence on support from the United States of America through the CIA. And the CIA exerts its influence in South America through the oligarchy by protecting the oligarchs. To a certain extent, the same is happening clearly among the Arab countries that are supporting the United States. The United States is there supporting the oligarchy because the oligarchy is afraid of what had happened. Keep in mind what happened years ago, some decades ago, in Iran. Iran was under the control of the Shah and his pro-American security services. Once the Iranian Revolution took place, they threw out the Shah, broke the connection with Americans, and since then have really been one of the few support bases for decency and one of the primary supporters of the Palestinian people under oppression. Now, the thing is that if the Qataris or the Saudis, and let's be very clear, the Arab people are horrified and appalled at what's happening to their brothers and sisters in Gaza. The problem is that they've been under the iron fist of their oligarchy. To the same extent, now let me be careful. Ireland, as with many other free market countries, has a very rich handful of people effectively in control. Now, we have the, if you like, the fallacy of electoral parliamentary democracy. But to stay in control, the wealthy in this country of Ireland depend for their control on support of the United States. The United States have invested heavily in Ireland, and at the same time can, as we know, with Trump's latest threat to tariffs on pharmaceuticals and other products that we're making here, that it would, if you like, effectively undermine the hegemony of the oligarchy. Now, it might sound a little bit extreme, but it's actually what's happening. So for that reason, the Dublin government, the government in Dublin, is effectively allowing, and its neutrality, the fact that the 26 county state is neutral is a misnomer. They're facilitating the use of Shannon Airport, facilitate the US Army with all its and Air Force to fly through Shannon, use Shannon as a military base. Dr Shaat talked about Cyprus being used by the RAF to support the Israeli Zionist Air Force. To the same extent, Shannon is being used exactly the same way to support the Zionist regime. So not only that, but I mean, there's been regular reports of aircraft flying over the Irish airspace containing weapons of mass or weaponry for Israel. So neutrality is a misnomer. It's actually not neutral at all. Plus the fact that the Irish government has conceded its sovereignty to PESCO, the military wing of the European Union, which works hand in glove with NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Alliance or organization, which is effectively just the armed forces of the United States of America. So in practice, Irish neutrality it doesn't exist. The Irish people have less control over their destiny than they think. The sovereign people is something that we need to achieve, but we don't have, because we don't have complete sovereignty over what we do. And ever since the formation of the state, there's been a concession after concession to imperialism, and imperialism, unfortunately, its underlying principles never change. Sometimes we face it. It can be American imperialism. It could have been at one time it was Roman imperialism, Greek imperialism, Roman imperialism. It's moved on. Spanish, Hispanic imperialism, British imperialism, Yankee imperialism, but it's the same basic disastrous plague on the ordinary people of the world.
Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, thanks. I think it's really refreshing actually to hear that pronounced, that, you know, we don't have neutrality. It's a misnomer, as you said. But at the same time, Barry, what we have at the minute is a lot of people who are being activated around the triple lock, myself included, where we're doing neutrality roadshows and the like, but really, you know, educating and agitating and mobilizing in communities just to explain what the government intention is. Do you think that's worthy, Barry? Do you think there's any point to that? If Tommy's saying, like, well, we don't have neutrality in the first place, what are we doing saying save neutrality, you know?
Well, I suppose you could say it's a kind of a misnomer, but sadly an awful lot of Irish people think that there is neutrality, and they think that the one neutrality, you know, when the 6-county and statelet and the southern 26-county statelet was set up. But I mean, that never happened. In fact, the reality is that surreptitious, and maybe not so surreptitiously, British imperialism had full control over the whole island of Ireland. And that was a deal upon which the state was ever set up in the first instance, that they would have. And then, of course, you had American and then later European imposing themselves upon Ireland in economical and through loans and through grants and through, I mean, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And that has been clear by the operations of the World Bank and the various loans given to South American countries or to any country anywhere in the world. There comes conditions with it. You know, if we're putting businesses, multinational business into your country, well, you know, you got to play ball here, and we'll call the shots. And you know, okay, you can have a government there that appears to be ruling the country and has its sovereignty and all the rest of it. But I mean, we just have to go back to Connolly and look quite clearly at what he said. Governments are but the committees of the rich to manage their affairs. And that's exactly what's happening in Ireland at the present time. What can we do? Well, I mean, there's no chance, and there never has been any chance of change coming from governments or those in authority. The only power we have is the power of the people on the ground. And it's up to activists, it's up to revolutionaries, it's up to socialists, Republicans and communists to make sure that the people of Ireland are clearly made aware of exactly what's happening. And that's the benefit of the neutrality roadshow that's travelling around Ireland. And that's very important. Now, you might say, but it's not making any effect. And indeed, you mightn't see it. And indeed, that it might not stop. The fact that the powers that be are determined to erode the neutrality and get rid of neutrality. Clearly, that's what they're set upon. There's no doubt about that. Anybody that's any doubt about that is under an extreme illusion. Just like the millions who marched against the wars in Iraq that time, and the millions who were out in the streets in support of the Palestinians, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to change what's happening today on the ground. But it equally doesn't mean that it's not to be done. Now, we have to be continually reassessing our strategies on the street. I mean, does marching every month or so to the Dáil up through O'Connell Street achieve what we want to achieve? It's very doubtful. It's very doubtful. In fact, I would say it won't. I think it's going to take a bit more, but that's part of it. I mean, these things have to evolve. Maybe you start marching on the streets and then you evolve it into something else. but you need to be evolving, because imperialism is evolving all the time, and those in power, those especially those who control world power, they're constantly changing their tactics. They're constantly figuring out how they can retain their grip on world populations.
Thank you, Barry. And I just want to say, because I think last week, whenever we started this program, and for those who weren't able to attend last week, Saeb gave a very detailed history of Zionism and its origins, and then brought us bang up to date, to the present moment. So just for the backstory, it'd be really important, and I think it would be useful to those tuning in to check that out from last week. But also last week we had Dorothy on, and I regaled how Dorothy had harangued Simon. So Barry, I'm talking about going from marching to going to harassing Simon Harris and Michael Martin. Dorothy was at it again this week, just to let everybody know. Good on you, Dorothy. I'm going to go to another brilliant activist who's on the streets as well. Patricia, what do you think of that Barry's just said, the statement, like, and I don't want to be too distant from, because I know the program today is about Qatar and about Israel. I'm going to come back to that, Saeb, in a second. But what do you think about that, Patricia, about Barry's statement that maybe the marching isn't having the impact, or we need to do more? Would you agree with it?
I think it's very, very important to continue marching, and I know that people can feel despair at times, because I can't believe that the genocide is still going on, where it's almost 2 years. I do think it's very, very important to continue, and I'm very impressed with Japan and South Korea, and I mean there's thousands and thousands of people out marching. But definitely, I do think that BDS is very important. We need to boycott Israeli goods. But could I just say, Róisín, that Israel has attacked 7 countries in 72 hours. Mm-hmm. And I think that the US, the mask is off completely. Any country, any nation that could trust the US after Doha, I mean, even surely, who could negotiate with the US? They cannot be trusted, and I think the mask is off.
Yeah, I think I agree, Patricia. I think it's terrible it has taken this, that those who are even reticent or reluctant, or who are maybe imperialist themselves, have nothing, they haven't a leg to stand on to try to defend what's actually happening now. And Saeb, just to come back to you, because Patricia mentioned like 7 countries under attack, including the flotilla. So I think it would be wrong, to this week to ignore what's happening as well. 2 drone attacks on the flotilla. Do you think, because I don't think things are stagnant, I think things are escalating in Ireland on the street, people are getting more angry, and I've just come from UCD today, where the students are, going back to college, and they're, wondering what's this camp at UCD. Do you think that the threat, or the dock workers in Italy are obviously, threatening to strike if anything happens to the flotilla, but do you think that there's anything that will trigger a bigger movement across workers, not just in Italy, but workers and students together? And what do you think? Do you think that the flotilla is at risk of further attack?
The flotilla today is sailed. Some of the boats sailed away to Gaza, and wish them the best and stay safe. The Zionist entity, when you see they got 2 attacks on the flotilla, attacked the family ship, which is the leading ship, and then Alama, which is we have on the Alama Frahiyus from Palestine Aid. Them 2 ships were attacked, and hopefully the Tunisian were worried, because there is so many drones in the area, and sometimes even the activists didn't know if that drone is Zionist drone or Tunisian. But this is part of the whole thing. And we remember in the 80s, Tunisia hosted the leadership of the PLO and some of these leaderships were assassinated in there. They came through the sea, assassinated by the American fleet in the Mediterranean, and they went into Tunisia and they killed them in their own houses. So this is, you know, something like what the Americans tried to do with Israelis as well. And this is in 1989, I'm talking, and this is today in 2025, they're doing it in Qatar. The international, it's very important what the workers in Italy done and the warning they sent. And the same time, the same thing, the prime minister in Spain echoed the same thing. But as I said before, I wish that will include the Palestinians in Gaza, but at least it's a starting point. And as Patricia was saying, the international, you know, people around the world, from Korea to Japan to Sydney, Australia, Canada, everywhere, they galvanize the force. But the problem is those as well, they are under the hegemony of the fascist states. I won't call South Korea or even Japan are sovereign state. They are occupied by the United States of America, de facto occupation. And and if we want to look as well at these, I'll give it a little bit of historical perspective here. What's happening in Qatar? These states, which is Qatar and Saudis and the Emiratis and all of them, which are attacked today by their own master, who they were always used as vessels against Arab liberation movement by the imperialist forces. We'll not forget about the Adel al-Jubeir, the Saudi foreign minister. He said to the American TV, and he was listing what the Saudis did and helped the United States of America in countering the Arab resistance in the region. And he listed how they helped the United States of America in destroying socialism in Egypt and toppling Nasser or killing Nasser, and then bringing Egypt from a socialist revolutionary state to become part of a vassal state for the United States of America, and the same way against the Palestinian resistance in Jordan, with the call it Black September, when they massacred a lot of the freedom fighters in Jordan. The same thing in Lebanon. It's middled in Lebanon and then ended by the Zionist entity's occupation of Lebanon. And what they did in Syria, toppling the help Qatar alone. The former Prime Minister of Qatar, in a long interview, and analyzed his interview in an article published at the time by Al Mayadeen TV Arabic station. They spent 178 billion. This is one state, which is Qatar, to topple and to Assad regime in Syria, and to encourage these Takfiri groups and finance them. And we saw the result today in Syria. So they are not innocent regimes, these ones. I don't feel sorry for them when the Zionist entity attack the sovereignty of Qatar or there, because these guys, as I said, surrendered their sovereignty long time ago to be used and abused by the empire. And this is when you see a state, the revolutionaries in the Arab world were talking about a proper nation state, a proper socialist state, which will look after the interest of the people. Egypt was a great example in that they were manufacturing, they were education, there was manufacturing, as I said once, from the needle to the airplane, and the development of the countries were so fast, and the people, their wages and the buying power of their wages is immense compared to what is today. But these reactionary regimes in these areas, we remember in the 70s, and in the 60s as well, the British and the Americans and the Israelis were engaged in wars in that region in southern Arabia against the revolution in Yemen at the time, and to secure the monarchists in these areas. In Oman, when the Arab revolutionaries wanted to create a socialist state on this reactionary state in Oman today, the whole Western intelligence and army were fighting in there. They want to make sure these rich oil-rich areas stay as a vassal state for the imperialism. And from there, they developed, instead of developing normal economies, which is with industries, with education, with the free education as well, with health, with that, with opportunities, linking them to modern day economies. They insisted in keeping them what we call it rentier economy, which means they just produce. And what Qatar depends on, it's a gas station, as the Americans say. It sells gas to Europe, liquid gas, and it sells oil. And the same thing in Saudi Arabia, the same thing in the Emirates, and all of them. The imperialists making sure these states are depending on selling commodities, as they want to change all the production in the region to that kind of I say backward economy, to make them always hinged in the mercy of the United States of America, or who is going to buy and sell. And who's going to buy and sell is controlled by the United States of America, because this is the last point in here. These states, when they sell their oil to China or to any other countries in the United States or India, the United States of America have a say how many barrels goes in there, or how many, what kind of currency it comes, which is have to come in the American dollar. And this American dollar have to go invested in American bonds to pay the deficit in the American budget. So all of these economies in there, all the states in there, used to maximize the benefit of the United States of America and to control the other countries in the region who buy this oil from these vassal states. So they can control the growth or the shrink in the economies by allowing them the quantities, specific quantities of oil. They did that in Sudan. They kept Sudan at the time famine ravaging in Sudan, and they won't allow them to sell their oil at the time. So you can understand how they even not even control sovereignty. They can make you die and not even use your own wealth to feed your own people.
You need to unmute.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, Saeb, for that. And on that point about, I know I don't mean to switch like as if it's the same, but just to come back to the context of, you know, our material conditions here in Ireland right now, Tommy, when Saeb talks about Qatar being a client or a vassal state, would you apply the same term to Ireland?
I'd be just reluctant to use the word vassal, because we do have a population that is used to fighting imperialism and has battled with imperialism for many, many centuries, actually. However, I think we've got to be realistic and take it that when you look at the Irish economy, I'm talking about, well, North and South, but particularly the Southern Irish economy, is so dependent on the United States. We have a comfortable bourgeoisie running the country. They have no talent themselves except selling the native economy to the United States. So on that basis, we have lost our economic sovereignty for certainty. We hear the fears being day by day spoken of, whether that if the United States withdraws its pharmaceutical industry or puts tariff on it, same with the digital industry, the data centers, that the country would be virtually on its knees again. So to that extent, and the Dublin government has no alternative economic policies, which means effectively that economic sovereignty rests with Washington, which means that, well, maybe not quite a vassal state, you're certainly very vulnerable, and we've got to reassert not only our sovereignty, but our economic sovereignty as well as everything else.
I'd have to agree with you there, Tommy. And I think on that note, we might just draw things to a close. I would invite people, if you'd like to stay after I press stop recording, stay on for a bit of a plenary or a chat. And I can give an update even on UCD encampment, or anybody who just wants to offer some suggestions or stay on, hang on for a chat, please do. But I want to say thank you very much again this week, Dr. Saeb Shaat, and solidarity to your brothers, your sisters, your people, our people, and to Tommy, to Barry, and to Patricia. Thank you for acting as a panel. It's all very short, but look, if this can continue, it'll be wonderful, and we hope to see you again next week. Free Palestine and free Ireland.
Free Ireland.
Free Palestine. And our
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. I think I've
Bye.
stopped recording. Yeah.